You're seeing this completely wrong, and it's not what you think. When an avoidant treats you warmly one day and distant the next, most people assume it's mixed signals. They think, maybe they care but they're scared, or maybe this push-pull means something deeper. But that's not what's happening at all. That shift in treatment isn't about your behavior or their stress levels. It's about your status in their emotional world. Research from the University of Michigan shows that avoidant individuals experience real nervous system stress when emotional closeness increases. Their body responds to intimacy the same way other people respond to danger. But here's what most people miss. When you're a priority, they manage that anxiety to maintain connection. When you're an option, they let that anxiety run the show. The difference isn't about love versus indifference. It's about commitment versus convenience. I see this pattern destroy people every single day. They come in confused, certain that an avoidance moments of warmth must mean something real. They analyze every text, replay every conversation, convinced they're just one step away from breaking through. But when we break it down, the pattern becomes painfully clear. When an avoidant truly loves someone, the fear is louder but the care is deeper, and their behavior reflects that. But when you're just an option, the distance isn't fear-based anymore. It's convenience-based. And that difference changes everything. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how avoidants act when they love you, how they act when they're only keeping you around for emotional backup, and how to finally stop confusing crumbs for commitment. When they actually love you, when an avoidant really loves someone, they don't suddenly become secure. In fact, they often still struggle with intimacy. But struggling and abandoning? Not the same thing. With someone they truly value, they fight their instincts. With an option, they indulge them. Their fear is tied to losing you, not avoiding you. Think about it. They think before they speak. They care about how their actions land. They might take longer to open up, but when they do, it comes from genuine vulnerability. They pay attention to your emotions, even if they don't fully know how to respond. They show small acts of consistency, even if they struggle with bigger emotional steps. They'll respond to your texts even when their nervous system is screaming at them to create distance. They'll show up to plans even when every fiber of their being wants to cancel. Why? Because you matter. And when you matter, they push through the urge to run. When you're just an option. But when you're just an option, none of that effort happens. An avoidant can be charming, playful, or affectionate in short bursts. Not because they're emotionally invested, but because low-stakes connection feels safe. You don't threaten their independence. You don't demand intimacy. So they give you just enough warmth to keep you around, but not enough to deepen the bond. They disappear without guilt because there's nothing at risk. They come back when they're bored, lonely, or looking for comfort. They give in to every avoidant impulse without a second thought because your disappointment doesn't register as a real cost to them. Here's what they're really doing. They're making a constant internal calculation about whether you're worth the effort of managing their fear. And for them, keeping you as an option feels like the perfect arrangement. They get to maintain ego supply, keep their roster full, and convince themselves they're still available for something better. It's a way of avoiding the fear that comes with choosing. Because once they choose you, once they commit fully, they have to face the possibility of losing you. And for an avoidant, that possibility feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. So instead, they keep one foot out the door, maintaining just enough connection to feel wanted, but never enough to feel trapped. The pattern that destroys you. I've watched people confuse these two patterns over and over. They cling to the moments of softness, telling themselves, this must mean they care. When in reality, the avoidant is only offering the level of connection that won't challenge their fear. If you're an option, closeness is never followed by deeper steps. It's followed by distance. If you're someone they love, closeness scares them, but they fight the urge to run because losing you feels worse than being uncomfortable. And this is where so many people get absolutely destroyed. You notice the difference, hoping maybe you're imagining it. The texts that used to come every morning now arrive sporadically, sometimes days apart. The weekend plans that were once a given now require negotiation and often fall through. The affection that used to flow naturally now feels rationed, like they're giving you just enough to keep you around but not enough to make you feel secure. You end up stuck between evidence and denial, holding on to a version of them that only shows up when it's convenient. The psychology behind it. But what you're feeling isn't understanding. It's anxious attachment trying to convert scarcity into significance. According to attachment research from Dr. Amir Levine, co-author of Attached, your brain is literally experiencing intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You get just enough positive reinforcement at random intervals to keep you hooked, always hoping the next interaction will be the one where things finally click back into place. How you start losing yourself. Here's where the truth becomes impossible to ignore. When you stay in the space of option, you start adjusting yourself to fit their comfort zone. You lower your expectations because you don't want to scare them off. You silence your needs because you worry they'll pull away. You accept inconsistent communication, half plans, and sudden disappearances because a few warm moments feel so good that you convince yourself they're worth the cold ones. You keep your schedule open just in case they decide to reach out. You turn down other opportunities because you're holding space for someone who isn't holding space for you. But what you're really doing, teaching your nervous system to survive on emotional crumbs. This isn't love. It's attachment trying to make sense of a connection that isn't growing. You excuse their behavior. You blame yourself for expecting too much. You start believing that unpredictable affection is the best you can get. And every time you accept less than you deserve, you're teaching yourself that your needs don't matter. You're reinforcing the belief that inconsistency is acceptable. You're slowly eroding your own standards until you don't even recognize what healthy treatment looks like anymore. The reality check. Ask yourself these questions honestly. Can you go days without hearing from them, without feeling panicked? Can you make plans without wondering if they'll actually show up? Can you express a need without fear of being labeled too much? If the answer to any of these is no, then you're not being loved. You're being kept as an option. What changes everything? This is why the most powerful thing you can do is step back from the option role entirely. When you stop accepting the bare minimum, something shifts. You start seeing the situation clearly instead of through the lens of hope. You reclaim your self-respect. You remember that love is supposed to feel mutual, steady, and chosen, not like a puzzle you're constantly trying to solve. And here's the part most people never realize. Avoidants don't face their own patterns until someone stops being available for half connection. As long as you stay in the option space, they don't have to grow. They don't have to choose. They don't have to risk anything. But when you step away, truly step away, they either rise to show real love or they fade out completely. Either outcome gives you the clarity you deserve. Setting real standards. Here's what healthy standards look like. If someone treats you inconsistently, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to say, I see how you show up for me, and it's not enough. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly or justify your needs. You're allowed to require effort, even if it makes them uncomfortable. You're allowed to choose yourself. And if they truly value you, they'll step up. If they get defensive or accuse you of being demanding, that tells you everything. They were more interested in keeping you available than building something real. The transformation. When you create real boundaries, something powerful happens. You reconnect with your standards. The confusion lifts. You see clearly for the first time. You realize you were accepting crumbs and calling it connection. You were tolerating inconsistency and calling it understanding. You were diminishing yourself and calling it flexibility. But none of those things were virtues. They were survival mechanisms you developed to cope with someone's inability to love you properly. What you actually deserve. You deserve someone who doesn't treat you differently based on their mood or circumstances. You deserve someone who doesn't vanish when connection gets real. You deserve someone who sees your consistency, your willingness to invest your depth, and matches it with unwavering presence. The right person won't make you feel like an option. They'll be clear. They'll be reliable. They'll be undeniably present. You won't have to wonder if they care because their actions will answer that question every single day. Because you were never meant to compete with someone's fear. You were meant to be chosen. Not occasionally. Not conveniently. Fully. When an avoidant treats you like an option, it's not a phase. It's not about timing. It's your cue to recognize your worth and make room for someone who treats you like the priority you are.